And welcome back, everybody, to this GSA show. Is picking the goals that needs to be done and telling their teammate what to do. So very exciting and interesting perspective on the bingo game. Very fun. I can speak from experience. And let's go ahead and meet our teams. We'll start with the returning team here, Team LakeClipper. You guys are fresh off of a match just now, so tell me a little bit about how you guys feel going into this one. We'll start with yous in Pars.
Yeah, in my last match I didn't find the best route, so I'll try to focusing a bit more on finding a route this time. And yeah, I hope we can do better and maybe catch a win here.
We can hope for the best.
Yeah.
And so Zimpars is going to be the router for you guys.
Yeah.
The runner for Team LakeClipper is Small Ant. And Small Ant, how are you feeling after that last one?
Hi there. I'm feeling pretty good. My movement was solid. There are some things that were shaky just because I've lost some of the game knowledge from haven't done bingo in a while, but I feel like overall my movement was good. And this one I'm feeling confident again that we can pull out a victory, I'm hoping.
And I suppose we'll just have to see.
Moving
on to Team Brimey, we have on the routing side of things today, we have Bry Guy himself. He was just commentating the last match. How are you, Bry Guy?
Hello. I am doing well. I'm excited for the match today. Should be good.
Yes, and these guys are warmed up. Does that make you guys nervous at all?
A little bit, but we practiced the other day and it seemed to go pretty smoothly. I'm ready to route. I got my paper and pencil here. We're ready to go.
What more do you need? That's exactly what I do too. I've always got a little notepad next to me when I do this kind of stuff. Makes things a lot easier. And then running for Team Brimey is Odd Me. Odd Me, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I feel pretty good about this match because, as Bry Guy said, we did do a practice run, and I think we did pretty well. My movement was pretty solid all around, so hopefully I don't make too many big mistakes. But the team name is actually pronounced Brimey because it's a combination of our names. But I like to think of it as Team Brime because if you use your Twitch Brime sub, you can get a free subscription to twitch.tv/speedrun right now.
True. You absolutely can do that. So yeah, make sure you use your Twitch Prime subs accordingly if you have them available to you, of course, free with Amazon. But with that all being said, it sounds like these guys are geared up, ready to go. You guys can leave the call whenever you're ready, start your own VC, and we will get this show on the road.
All right. Good luck to Team Brian.
And likewise, LakeClipper. Good luck.
Good luck.
Now, I find this setup of bingo absolutely fascinating. Yo-Yo Swift, have you done any of these kinds of matches yourself?
Yeah, I think I've done 2 of these team triple bingos before. And yeah, yes. They're really fun.
Yeah, there was a time we kind of labbed this out amongst the community a couple of weeks ago. There was a lot of us in the community that wanted to give it a try. We've been calling it rally bingo, which is kind of a perspective take on, the rally racing style where the driver's in the driver's seat doesn't know where he's going. The router is basically telling him what he needs to do. So a very interesting kind of perspective on bingo. I think it takes a lot of the stress out of the runner's perspective because they don't need to focus on trying to come up with where they're going at the same time as also routing. So it creates a little bit of a cleaner perspective on bingo, I think.
Yeah, you can just really focus on just one thing instead of worrying about trying to find a route while also playing the game.
Exactly. And these guys are just heading off here. The board has been revealed. Right directly in the middle is a square I love to see. Outfit door in Seaside. So that's going to already eliminate 4 line potentials from the board if they're planning to not go that far into the game. It also appears that there is answer 8 Sphinx questions, also a Seaside goal, also a very slow thing to go for. So potentially having to route around those is going to be the idea here, but we do see some other very nasty looking as well. it looks like no matter what you do here, you're either going out of your way quite substantially, or you're going to be going to Seaside or Snow by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Anything hopping out at you right away here as we take a look at this board?
I don't know. There's lots of big goals. This might end up being a Snow or Seaside finish.
That's what I'm thinking too. I think that you could, there is potential for you to skip out on it. There are only 4 rows on the board, or sorry, 4 lines on the board that are potential skips for this kind of idea, but those lines have some potential nasty goals in them. Specifically, 28 moons in Wooded is kind of hefty. You've also got 20 moons from sub areas. Essentially, when it gets to that point, you're basically looking at either a really, really, really long time in the early game, or you're looking to get to Day Metro anyway, so it might be worth just to go to Seaside or Snow at that point.
Yeah.
But you could combo 20 moons from sub areas with something like 28 moons in Wooded, as there is a lot of sub areas in Wooded. You can also see that there's World Peace Restored in Wooded, which is probably the fastest kingdom to get World Peace in. So potentially not a terrible idea. There's also 2 moons from sub areas in Cap that you could combo that with. 8 moons in Cap in the top left corner. So maybe avoiding Seaside or Snow is not such a terrible idea if you combo it with getting lots of moons in Wooded.
Yeah, maybe there could be an option.
Yeah, the very first route that kind of pops into my head as I'm looking at this board at the moment is row 1, row 5, column 2. I'm not sure about you, because you are doing some sub areas just in other goals along the way. Lots of Wooded moons. You're going to be spending some time in Wooded probably. The rest is kind of just miscellaneous stuff that you kind of have to get out of the way. There's also 10 moons from Nuts in the top right corner, which synergizes well with Wooded moon.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good route for not going to Snow and Seaside.
Yeah, and there might be some other possibilities if we are looking at Seaside or Snow. I actually haven't really taken a peek at a lot of those, but going to Snow requires things like restoring World Peace in Sand, or completing the RC car race in Metro, or collecting lots of regionals in Sand. So going to Snow doesn't really seem like a very good idea. What about Seaside? Seaside would require 28 moons in Sand, or World Peace in Sand. So alternatively, you could go to Seaside and spend more time in Sand instead of Wooded. Those are kind of the ideas that I'm seeing popping out of me right now.
Yeah. So both these runners are pretty much even right now.
Yes, it doesn't look like either of them went for any extra purple coins out of the way as they approach this fight. Both looking like they're just taking the kind of the usual approach to Cascade as we start out here. Looking at this board, the only real thing that happens in Cascade is Captain Toad, by the looks of it. Of course, if they're going for a goal like 20 moons from sub areas, that might also be an option to do some sub areas while they're here.
There's also 25 regionals.
Yes, I do see that, and that would actually line up in column 2 that we were talking about earlier. Luckily, regional coins in Cascade are actually rather quick if you're already looking to spend some time in Cascade anyway. So we'll have to see what these guys do now that this Madame Brutal fight is over. They are actually coming out of this fight a little bit later than is typically expected from any percent, so it's possible they might have picked some purple coins up at the beginning. Yes, and already we see these guys right out of the gate going for a couple of different approaches to getting through Cascade here. Team LakeClipper grabbing purple coins, going up this way and grabbing as many as they can kind of up around this mountain area. Team Brimey actually right behind. It looks like they just went to go grab the 3 purple coins over by Talkatu before continuing along this way. You can already see Team Brimey is marking off 25 regional coins in Cascade. A very, very easy, solid goal to go for, I think. not really requiring you to go out of the way very far in Cascade. And we also
Yeah.
see LakeClipper going for a timer challenge here. I think I saw timer challenges on the board as well in row 5, column 4 there. So definitely worth it if we're going to be staying in Cascade to get some of those done. Could be signaling a that early finish route that we talked about earlier.
And they are both getting that treasure chest as well, and there is a 5 treasure chest moon goal.
Oh, I do see that one. It's in column 4, row 2 there.
Yeah, but so
Column
they might
4,
be thinking about column 4. Yeah.
that's true, yeah. And column 4 is actually the other one that is a potential early finish route. So maybe we'll see something like that instead of World Peace or 2 Warp Painting Moons. But they do have the regional coins in Cascade, so it's interesting. They might actually eliminate maybe one of the top or bottom rows, because any combination of those would probably be an early finish, but just depends on which kind of approach you take, I think.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see a bit.
Absolutely, yeah. It's usually the route doesn't pop out at you until sometime later in the in the route. But both of these guys leaving Cascade roughly the same time. Looks like they kind of had the same approach. I think LakeClipper went for the timer challenge as well as the chest. I'm not sure if Team Brime did the same.
I think he.
wasn't. Okay, yeah. So maybe they are going for kind of the same ideas here. And now, bingo is especially exciting when there are multiple possible routes on the board. You can see a lot of different things happening and kind of formulating, and like you can see that things diverge, and it's always hard to tell who's in the lead until somewhere towards the end. However, sometimes it's neat to have a board where the teams do pick the same thing, because then it can kind of come down to execution, and you can kind of gauge who's winning based on the execution alone, and sometimes that can be exciting for a race as well.
Yeah, sometimes it comes down to pretty close times.
Exactly. And you can kind of see who performs the same tasks a little bit better. More akin to, like, you know, watching people compete in any percent, for example. Now we see these guys taking a rather any percent approach to the Sand Kingdom by the looks of it at the beginning here. Going up to the Dune Moon, going up to the Archway. Now, we were talking about how sand could potentially be routed in if you were planning to go to Seaside. You could be going for World Peace, you could be going for 28 Moons, but considering they're taking a very natural approach, I suppose, maybe not seeing something like that. However, Team Brimy is actually making a little bit of a detour here, going out of the way to get the Ice Cave treasure.
Is that a goal? No, I don't think it is.
It isn't, so they might be in here for the purpose of coins.
Yeah, and possibly to count as a sub-area moon as well.
That is true. It does count as a sub-area moon, even though there's only one in here. Sub-area goals tend to be in numbers that are even, simply because there's typically 2 in sub-areas, but sometimes routing in just the one here and maybe one quick one from a different sub-area makes things easy as well.
Yeah.
So Team LakeClipper, we see them here grabbing Koopa Trace Walking, which is in row 1, something that we did notice as well before. Not the fastest moon when it's on its own, but because it is a goal, it's not necessarily the most annoying thing to do.
Yeah.
LakeClipper here going for that. Of course, you have to be competent in walking in a circle, which we see these guys not being able to do. A little bit of an egg going on there.
Yeah. Not the best circle.
But I'm gonna give it another shot here. I think they just took the circle a little bit wide, not making that same mistake twice there for Team LakeClipper. Still a little bit of a lopsided circle. I'm gonna give that about an 8.5 out of 10 myself. So, you know, it's enough to pass. It's enough to pass. They've marked the goal on the board and they're moving on. So Team Brime, we noticed they are actively going into this sub area. This sub area by itself is rather slow, but it could be signaling that they are trying to kind of nail down that large 20 moons from sub areas goal as fast as they can.
Yeah, and also probably get some more regionals.
Yes. If column 4 is kind of in their sights, they will need to kind of go out of their way for regional coins.
Yeah, 100 really isn't that bad though.
Yeah, especially when you spread it out over even Metro is really quite easy to kind of nail down, especially in some of the smaller kingdoms like Lost and like Lake. There's some very easy to nab purple coins along the way there. So.
And Team LakeClipper also going into this sub area.
And we see Team Brimey doing the Koopa trace walking, so essentially going for the same things, just in a slightly different order. They are much better at drawing circles. We can see a circle made. So yeah, column 2 is a really juicy one. When you combine the fact this is really quick and wooded with those 28 moons, it does seem like a very tempting thing to kind of go for, especially when you consider you don't need to go very far into the game to achieve it. 2 warp painting moons is something to, consider. I don't think that it's really going to be much of a problem if you're going all the way to Metro. You can do some sort of comboing ideas. Maybe if they're going to Wooded first, you can take the warp painting from Metro to Lake, and then Lake to, I think it's Luncheon or something like that, and kind of make your way through that way and get all the warp painting moons really quickly that way. We might be seeing some lake painting jumps, or maybe even some lake clip ideas, considering this team is called LakeClipper. We will have to see.
Yeah. And it looks like Team LakeClipper also going all the way over here for the Bullville Maze sub area.
Yes, and this sub area is really fast, but it's kind of out of the way. So following the Jaxi, a really solid idea to get around Sand Kingdom, especially when you have a lot of goals that you need to accomplish. Lots of coins in this little stack as well, like 120. But yeah, very quick moons to. All right. Continuing to jaunt through the Sand Kingdom here. These guys are relatively tied in moons. We see Team Brime going up to the sub-area themselves now. Team LakeClipper hopping on a Jaxi, probably going to make a quick pit stop to that final sub-area in Sand before picking up one more quick moon and leaving, potentially. The way that they're kind of routing through Sand doesn't make me believe that they're going to be continuing to grab moons in Sand. It doesn't really look like it. It looks like there's a real conscious effort to hit the sub-areas here and not do a whole lot of extra stuff.
Yeah. So both of these teams are, I'm guessing, going to be going for the 20 moons from sub-area.
Yeah, which means that row 1 is very, very likely. I would imagine that they go for the slots moon as well, if that's the case. Or potentially, we could see these teams skip out on row 1 and do both of the columns instead.
Yeah, because they did both grab that treasure chest in Cascade, so they might be going for something like column 4.
Yeah, column 2, column 4, maybe row 5 instead of the top row. Not a bad idea. It does require a cap revisit regardless, no matter which kind of method you choose here. Just potentially not wanting to grab 8 moons from cap because there is such a small pool there to begin with. So looking to just grab the 2 moons from the sub area there. There's also a timer challenge in cap that you can take advantage of. So routing ideas there.
Yeah, and both teams pretty much leaving Sand Kingdom at exactly the same time.
It's amazing how on pace these guys have been this entire race.
It's pretty much been even.
Yeah, which could potentially signal that they are going for the same idea. Definitely not spending any more time in sand than is necessary, grabbing the minimum amount of moons and then heading out of there. So definitely going for that 20 moons from sub-areas goal, it seems like. Also potentially grabbing some treasure chests. We saw that Team LakeClipper's last moon was actually the Jaxi sub, or not the Jaxi sub area, sorry, the Sphinx room, which has lots of coins. It also has one treasure chest moon in there.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to see what Team Brime's gonna be doing, if they're gonna be doing lake clip or lake painting jump or whatever, if they're for the war paintings. And also Team LakeClipper looks like they are going back to cap, so we can kind of see what they're doing in cap and see more what their route is really gonna be.
Absolutely. So the idea here, making that cap revisit, getting it out of the way. They are taking advantage of that 1-timer challenge, obviously on their minds, so it looks like that 6-timer challenge is going to be a goal that they're going to go for. And then they're also going to take a quick dip into this sub-area. Now, it signals to me that they aren't going to be getting 8 moons in cap because they actually warped up to the top and then didn't grab Captain Toad, didn't grab any of the sub-areas up there. So it's very likely that they're just here for the timer challenge, the 2 moons from the sub-areas, and then they'll be on their way. Meanwhile, Team Brime is in Lake as we speak, going through some of the sub-areas as well, grabbing some quick sub-area moons in here. Making very quick work of that room. It can be a very daunting one if you quick strats.
Yeah.
Alright, Team LakeClipper activating that final moon shard. Just about to finish with this sub-area, which will be all they need to finish off that bottom right corner, the 2 moons from sub-areas goal.
And yeah, they all were being back to the Odyssey.
Yeah, just like that, cap is finished. So it's pretty safe to say we have ruled out row 1 for Team LakeClipper. The idea to not go to Snow or Seaside is looking rather juicy at this point. I think that Wooded is the kingdom we will see them spend the most time in.
Yeah, because we do have world peace and 28 moons.
Yes.
So, at least Team LakeClipper definitely looking like they're going for row 5, column 2, and column 4.
Yes, unless they surprise us somehow by throwing in some sort of seaside idea. Maybe they have like bottom left, top right in their sights, but it just doesn't seem feasible to go all the way to Seaside or Snow with the route that we can kind of see here.
Yeah. Both these teams are grabbing this music note moon.
Yes.
There is a 4 moons from music note, so
yeah, really solidifying that column 4. We're not going to see them mark anything off of column 4 until probably later on in the run. There's a lot of like multi-kingdom goals spread out through column 4. In fact, all of them are. So we won't see any of column 4 get checked off until we probably reach closer to Metro. But they are steadily checking away at some of the objectives in that column.
And Team LakeClipper looking like they were about to go for Lake Clip.
This is the time to do it, if at all.
And,
setting up right now, yeah.
And Team Brimy going for Lake Painting Jump and did that successfully.
Amazing.
Oh.
A very interesting side-by-side comparison of just how you can achieve 2 different ways, in fact, of achieving this particular moon up at the top without doing it a legitimate way. Very, very fascinating.
So Team LakeClipper successfully getting Lake Clip.
Getting the chest inside the water tunnel, and also warping back up and getting the treasure chest associated with this warp painting moon. It also doubles as a treasure chest moon, so both teams have actually marked that goal off of their board. Now, not a whole lot really needs to be done in Lake aside from those things. It doesn't look like there's any moon goals in Lake specifically, but there are lots of music notes in Lake. There are some sub areas. There are indeed some treasure chests. So I think that from what I see here, Team Brime maybe going a little bit overboard on the moons that they require here, but making sure that they can tackle some of the other kind of longer kingdom goals. You can see them warping back to the Odyssey already. Team LakeClipper looks like they're making an effort to just get as many minimum moons as they can. Do have to remember the team LakeClipper's already made a visit to Cap, so even though they are behind in Lake, they are a little bit ahead as far as progression goes towards finishing goals, I think.
Yeah. We're gonna have to see when Team Grime is gonna go back to Cap.
Team LakeClipper also going out of the way for some purple coins here, it looks like. Now, if the routing that we've kind of identified is correct, purchase 3 full costume sets is on the board. So it's potential that they might be stopping into the shop here in the lake while they can, just to buy a quick outfit. They also went out of their way for a lot of coins. Coin outfits become more game through the kingdoms. More coin outfits become available. It costs 200 coins per outfit. With these purple coins that they're collecting, they could very potentially finish up all of their outfits and then move on and not have to worry about it anymore. You see Team Brime is in Wooded now. Going about Wooded Kingdom in kind of the natural progression of like the any % route. So they grab the first 2 moons that are typical. They skip the shop for now.
And it looks like they're going for Nut Clip, but they actually failed.
Yeah, the setup was a little bit messed there, unfortunately. So they're just going to have to go about it the regular way. We'll see if they do any sort of like rock clip ideas, or maybe they'll just go about the regular way. Now, if column 2 is indeed on the table, then it looks like they might have to kind of go out of their way for some extra moons in Wooded anyway. So how they go about that really determine who comes out ahead of Wooded, I think, because we're going to be spending quite a bit of time.
Yeah, most time in.
Absolutely, especially if world peace is in the picture as well.
Yeah.
Now, he did say, Oddme said something about keeping cons handy just in case this particular strategy right here comes into play, using the down throw in order to achieve those purple coins in a timely manner. Fortunately, taking damage from the fuzzies before grabbing that last moon, but still, good execution, good thing to keep the Joy-Cons around for.
Team LakeClipper is now leaving Lake and heading to Wooded. And we're gonna have to, by the end of Wooded, we'll kind of see who's ahead, but it's also gonna be kind of hard because Team LakeClipper, like we said, has already gone to Cap, but Team Brime hasn't yet.
That's right.
They might be planning to revisiting at the very end, possibly, or maybe after Wooded.
Yeah, there is a potential for, a seaside visit still within these routes. I think that maybe if Team Brime goes for something like bottom left, top right instead of row 5, they could avoid going to Cap entirely, but it would require them to finish out all of Metro in order to get to Seaside. But Seaside itself would be rather quick in a situation like that. All they would have to do is the outfit door, which means 15 purple coins, buying the outfit, and then going in and doing the little dance. So potential for something like that to still happen. We haven't really seen what else Team Brime is going to go for aside from those 2 columns. But yes, here we are in the thick of Wooded. Going to be spending a lot of time here for both teams, I imagine.
And Team Brime is skipping the tower. So maybe they might not be doing row 5 with the 28 moons because they should have gotten those moons probably.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that they are going out of their way to gather all 28 moons in this kingdom, which could be a very smart idea. 28 moons is a lot to gather. So by skipping out on row 5 and instead going to Seaside, you are eliminating the time spent in Wooded and kind of tacking it onto the end instead. So very possible that they won't be making any cap visits. It might actually be going for that bottom left, top right instead.
Possibly.
Just have to make sure to gather those 10 moons from nuts on their journey, which shouldn't be too hard considering more nuts open up after Speward.
Yeah, and since they're going for world peace, it shouldn't be that bad anyway.
Team LakeClipper going here for this 20 moons from sub-areas goal as well, of course. So making a pit stop inside this pipeway room, also with a very slick down throw strat. Unfortunately, just messing up the timing with the fuzzies, having to do this room slightly the slow way. A little bit scary there with an extra damage taken, but making it out okay. Team Brime, on the other hand, making their way through. If they are just going for this world peace goal, they are actually a little bit ahead in moons, but not necessarily the biggest deal considering sub-areas are a thing to look out for here. Yeah, opening up this here chasm, not only getting one extra story moon, but purposefully going for world peace by the looks of it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see if they end up leaving wooded right after without the 28 moons. And also, possibly they might be thinking about doing a revisit to wooded through the painting in Metro and getting the rest of the moons, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go about doing that. Not a terrible idea, considering the war painting is directly behind the Odyssey. If they are making a seaside visit, then once they've warped back to the Odyssey, they can hop into the painting very quickly, grab the warp painting moon there, and then come back through and go directly to seaside. So not a terrible routing strategy there, actually. LakeClipper, on the other hand, actively looks like they are going for some extra moons along the way here.
So, yeah. But Team LakeClipper, we are pretty sure, is doing the route we said earlier.
Yep. Grabbing some extra purple coins along the way. This is going to line up with that 100 total regional coins goal that is on the board. Also, if they are doing row 5, purchase 3 costume sets is a very likely option for these guys. But yeah, what I thought was going to be a very similar route has actually taken quite a diverge now that we've arrived in Wooded. We can see there is potential for Team LakeClipper to be going for that early finish with a quick cap revisit and some extra moons and extra time spent in Wooded specifically, but then there is Team Brime coming in with a different strategy, planning to cut out some of that extra time spent in Wooded in favor of going all the way to Seaside. So these routes are going to change quite significantly from here on, and we'll just have to see which execution comes out a little bit better, I think.
Yeah.
The only scary thing about going all the way to Snow or Seaside is that you can sometimes underestimate which, or like how long Metro takes, especially when you factor in things like sub-areas. If you're looking to do the sub-areas in Metro for that hefty 20 moons from sub-areas goal, sometimes the sub-areas can take a little bit longer than you're anticipating them to take. So that can sometimes play into just how hefty a goal like that can be, especially going to Snow or Seaside.
The main problem with Snow or Seaside, even if you're not doing a lot with Snow or Seaside, is really just completing Metro.
Exactly, yes. Any percent Metro takes about 8 minutes. But that's, of course, doing it optimally with no extra goals on the side. That's not collecting regional coins. That's not doing any extra sub-areas. So the potential here for things to take a lot longer in Metro than you expect is very high. So that's going to be another kind of lengthy kingdom, in my opinion. Now, interesting thing here, Team LakeClipper leaving. Not actually opting for any of the extra moons in this kingdom, and not even opting for world peace.
Yeah. So
Now,
probably either they're
actually-
going
Go ahead, yeah.
either they're going to go back to the painting, or maybe they're actually going for a different route overall. And Team Brime also going to Cap Kingdom, so maybe their route is what we said before as well, possibly. I don't know. We're gonna have to kind of see a bit what's going on.
Yes, I am rather perplexed now, because we do see some lines formed by both of these teams, but it looks like they're kind of doing us a little bit of a debated situation here, where they're doing some things that are not entirely expected. I think Team LakeClipper, comprising of, Zinpars and Smallland. I know that Zinpars is a very clever router. I think that we could still see the 28 Moons in Wooded and the World Peace, but I think he's going to be saving it to come back through the Warp Painting and finish it later. And potentially that could be the last stop on this entire route, is, finishing Metro, doing the goals that are required in Metro, coming in through the painting, and finishing Wooded, basically. Having a Wooded finish, but having already gone through to Metro. A very interesting perspective, and a very clever take. You can tell that Zimpar knows the kind of very creative, intimate details of this game.
Yeah, and so looks like Team Brime did mark off that 2 moons of sub area, so maybe they're not going for a Snow Seaside finish, and maybe actually doing World 5 like we said, and maybe they're planning on revisiting as well through the painting.
Yes, that's a very good point. Not to be overlooked, I think that warp paintings can be very fast, especially when you factor in the fact that you don't have any transition between, like for the Odyssey, for example. It's basically just a quick zip through, no need to dump moons or anything like that.
Yeah, and also, we still have a 2 warp painting moons goal as well, so that would also go with that.
Exactly, they do have to go through regardless, so comboing that into some other moons is probably a really good idea. Now, Team LakeClipper arriving into Lost first. Now, if these guys are doing very similar routes, then it's potential that Team LakeClipper is, in fact, just has a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, but at the same time, Team Brime did actually do World Peace, but LakeClipper has not, so they have made a bit less progress in Wooded than Team Brime did.
Indeed, that's a very good point.
So it's probably about even right now.
And it's very interesting to see the different perspectives taken on this route, and how different it can be, yet similar, just because of warp painting specifically. It looks like Team LakeClipper is taking a very any percent approach here, not doing anything crazy or out of the way. It doesn't really look like there is anything to achieve in Lost, except for maybe collecting some regional coins along the way. Regional coins in Lost are extremely fast, extremely easy to grab, so it doesn't surprise me at all that that is kind of the approach they're taking here. Gonna be grabbing this moon underneath the bridge and then on their way back out to finish up Lost. Now, Metro is another kingdom we're probably going to see a lot of time being spent in.
Yeah, and a lot of goals are going to be starting to be probably marked off soon, because like you said, all the goals in column 4 are goals that require going to different kingdoms.
That's right, yes.
So lots of goals are going to be starting to get marked off after these guys are working through Metro.
And I can imagine that if they're not going to Snow or Seaside, then getting through to Day Metro is probably the thing that is on their mind the most, because a lot of sub-areas open up and are available to them after the Wiggler has been taken down. So the idea here, getting to Day Metro, completing a lot of sub-areas in order to meet their quota for that one goal at the top row there, and then maybe taking a visit through the warp painting. Also, something to note is that 10 Moons from Nuts is on the board as well. It doesn't look like either of these teams are going for row 1, but you know, a lot of things can still be achieved in Wooded just by taking a revisit. So we
Yeah.
might have to see what happens there.
And also in Metro, there is the 35 regional goal in row 5, so they're gonna have to do that as well.
Yes, that is correct. There's no moon goals in Metro specifically, so you can see Team LakeClipper actually skipping out on that girder sandwich moon, which is very fast moon to get in Metro specifically, going out of the way to avoid that one. So definitely not looking to finish up Metro here. Just looking to get through Metro as fast as possible, gathering some purple coins along the way, and then likely going to, like we said, warp out through the painting.
Yeah, and Team Brime most likely doing the same thing, so this is actually going to be pretty close.
Yes. The time difference between these two is actually not very far off at all. You do have to consider that Team LakeClipper has not achieved world peace yet, which in itself is probably about a minute and a half worth of boss fight. Team Brime bringing up the rear here in Metro Kingdom, but has indeed achieved world peace. So I would say that they're about even. You might even consider Team Brime to be slightly ahead. It's going to come down to execution of Metro, sub-areas, and then whatever it takes for them to finish up those extra moons in Wooded before they make their return visit.
Yeah.
Very interesting perspective, and you know, another clever thing about doing a revisit like this is that by collecting a minimum amount of moons in Wooded, you eliminate some of the moon dump that's associated with them. Because if you were to collect all 28 in the first visit to Wooded, your moon dump would be significantly larger than if you only collected the 16 that you needed. So finishing up a bingo board by not having to do that is kind of a fascinating, minimal, but fascinating time save. We see Team Brime climbing up the city hall here and actually taking a fall from the pole and having to do it again. Luckily, no deaths, so they're safe for now, but just a little bit of time lost, and this stuff is going to start to add up now that we are as close as we are.
Yeah. Every little thing is going to matter, because it's going to be very close.
Yeah, it's still a little bit too hard to say who is exactly in the lead here. We haven't really been keeping an active count of sub-areas, but I imagine that the routers are doing their best to make sure that they have the right amount here. So now that Team LakeClipper has taken down this Mecha Wiggler, we will likely see them start to bang out some of these quicker sub-areas in Metro.
Yeah, and then after that, go back to Wooded, and like I said, they're gonna start marking off goals pretty quickly, one after another.
Yes, Team LakeClipper doesn't have the 4 moons from music notes marked off yet, but there is. So potentially going for something like that while they're here, as well as the sub-areas. Also, 35 regional coins in Metro is on the board. Lots of very quick purple coins open up now that Day Metro has been achieved. Lots of ones on the buildings, especially in this area. So we'll probably see them go for some of those.
Yeah, Team LakeClipper getting this music note moon.
Music notes, not typically very quick moons, with a couple of exceptions, but this one is kind of in their way already, so they might as well go for it. And Team Brime is closing out Mecha Wiggler and entering the Day Metro portion themselves about a minute behind, which again leads me to believe that they might have a slight edge here. They also have one, they already have that music notes goal marked off, as well as world peace. So I think this is really going to come down to who can execute these sub-areas better, and then also the revisit to Wooded as well.
Yeah, both of them grabbing more regional for that 35 regional goal.
Yeah, I'm actually grabbing the ones from the same sign at the same time there. Grabbing a couple other ones along the way. Doing some building hopping here. Very quick purple coins all along the ceilings here. Yeah, Team LakeClipper very close to having completed that 35 regional coins in Metro goal. Just a couple of remaining purple coins up on the ceiling here. But as you can see, making quick work of Metro as best as they can.
Yeah, looks like Team LakeClipper was kind of a bit lost with those last 3 regionals. They were kind of looking around a bit.
Yeah, potentially not entirely familiar with where they all might be, but now they do have them all, and it looks like they've made a conscious effort to mark off that 100 in total regional coins as well. So, marking both of those goals off right away, making sure that, they're kind of all taken care of. Team LakeClipper grabbing only 1 moon from this sub area and now actually warping back to the Odyssey. Looks like they've made kind of a conscious effort to finish up a lot of their sub areas early on. Didn't really get many sub area moons from Metro, which is kind of surprising to me, but now they're making their way back to Wooded, and this is where the rest of this kingdom is going to come into play. I think there's lots of sub areas in Wooded specifically, so probably going to be completing World Peace and then completing a lot of sub areas as well as grabbing the remaining moons that they require to finish up this board. Very close though.
Yeah.
Coming through the warp painting, they've grabbed that final moon from the warp painting. There's a lot of sub areas kind of in this section in particular. So they're going to be going out of their way to do those, I think.
And Team Brown very soon, well, right now, going back to the Odyssey, so looking like they're also going into Wooded, and it looks like they are going to be a bit ahead because they have already World Peace Wooded.
That's true. It's kind of hard to say where they are in terms of sub areas, though. They have not marked off the 100 regional coins goal yet. So they'll probably be having to do a little bit of extra collecting in Wooded specifically for that. But as far as sub areas are concerned, Team LakeClipper has a little bit of a lead on them, but they also have to complete World Peace. This is actually a very, very close match. Another goal that we haven't really been keeping a whole lot of track of is this purchase 3 full costume sets. Probably something they're going to do after achieving World Peace. Oh, Team LakeClipper actually getting a little bit ahead of themselves inside this poison room, getting in front of the flower road and actually accidentally taking a fall, having to come out of there, actually warping out right away. I'm not entirely sure what the plan is here.
They did just lose some time, which everything matters at this point.
Yeah, Team LakeClipper now looks like they are going to be activating the World Peace section here. A couple of sub-areas become available after you've beat Spewart, specifically the ones that they were just in. Some sub-areas become available after you have completed World Peace here, notably the very slow one at the top of the kingdom that requires the seed to be planted. Again, I haven't really been keeping active count, to be honest, of just how many sub-area moons have been gathered by both teams, but they both must be closing in on that relatively quickly here.
And do you remember how many moons each of the teams left Wooded at the first visit?
Now, I know that Team LakeClipper left as early as they possibly could. I think Team Grimy went out of the way to gather some extra moons.
Yeah, I think they got like 20 or 21 or something. They did get a few extra moons, I remember.
Yeah. Either way, 28 moons in Wooded is a pretty hefty goal. So we'll just have to see how that kind of plays into their routing. When you have a lot of these goals that require you to compile things throughout the courses of Kingdoms, including these 20 moons from sub-areas and these 4 music notes and these 6 timer challenges, it can be kind of hard to keep your head wrapped around all of these things and like make sure that your moon totals line up. When you take in consideration just how many moons you need total, keeping track of that can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, if you have a lot of things to kind of keep in mind. It could definitely be difficult sometimes.
Yeah, there is in fact a lot to do in Wooded specifically, so it would not surprise me if one of these teams goes a little bit over on one of their goals. Team LakeClipper having a little bit of difficulty with this Torque Drift fight, in fact.
Yeah.
Not the most friendly boss, to be sure. Team Brimey finishing up that Flower Road Run sub-area, now taking a visit to the shop. The shop here, of course, is offering some costumes for 200 coins a piece. They do need 3 full costume sets in order to complete that bottom left square. So we're going to see them buy a couple of them while they're here. They might be using their purple coins to buy an outfit as well.
Yeah, because they do only have 400 coins.
Yes, if they only had 400 coins, that means that they're going to need some extra purples in order to buy that final one. It does look like they've marked off the purchase 3 full costume sets on the board already, so potentially already having bought another costume with purples in a different kingdom.
Yeah. They're
Team
a little
Brimey
bit
taking a little bit of a stall here, it looks like. Maybe a little bit lost. All right, world peace has been restored for Team LakeClipper. They're going to be marking that square off the board relatively quickly here, and this is coming down to the wire now. Basically, having to complete the timer challenges, having to complete costume sets, and gather the rest of the moons that are available in this kingdom. They're going to have to go out of their way to do the sub-areas to finish their 20 moons goal, and then we will just have to see just how close this is going to come. But Team Brime actually marking off the 6 timer challenges with this timer challenge that they're completing right now.
And then it looks like after this, they might just be doing the sub area, and then they might be done.
I think you're right.
So this is looking like it's gonna be a win for Team Brime, because Team LakeClipper still needs some sub areas, more moons, and still they haven't marked that timer challenge goal yet. So
That's right.
it's gonna look like a win for Team Brime.
It's really, really close still. Team Brime, of course, this is just the last thing they have to do potentially is gather this last nut as well as the last shard in order to complete the goal. Whereas Team LakeClipper still got to do a timer challenge and then also a sub area at least. So
But yeah, this really came down to execution, because they both had the exact same route, and they were pretty even throughout the whole time, especially through Lake. They were pretty much the same pace, but then Team Brime did do World Peace earlier. Team Brime done with a 48-46, pretty good time, and Team LakeClipper just finishing up. Looks
Very
like
fast.
the same way.
And you know, to see that this route in particular just had so many different ways of going about it. They both had the same idea of coming back through the warp painting in order to finish. Very smart to kind of eliminate some time spent on dumping moons into the Odyssey. I think that was a really, really clever idea from both teams there. Not opting for any extra cap time spent there or any moons from slots. I think that that maybe was also an option, that row 1. But, you know, making this really work, especially with revisits, very, very solid showing. But yeah, Team LakeClipper now in this sub area. This is very potentially the last thing they need to do. It looks like they have marked off the timer. I really see them do that just as they finish up here.
Yeah, because they did do that timer challenge. Probably just didn't have some time to mark it.
Yeah, that's probably my guess as well. Maybe just need to do the one remaining timer challenge at the top of Wooded in order to finish that goal up. But yeah, I mean, Team LakeClipper looked like they were ahead for the kind of remainder portion after basically Wooded. It looked like they were ahead, but it just came down to execution. And I think either way that they put it, you know, that's what it would have had to come down to. And very interesting approaches from both sides as far as making this work. So
Yeah, and Team LakeClipper actually going into Deep Woods for this last timer challenge.
yes, there is one down here. Perhaps not the fastest timer challenge available to them in the game. The last minute they need to collect, so they're going to be rolling by that scarecrow, throwing the hat on there, and then finishing up this timer challenge. A very, very solid showing from both teams, in fact.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah, very close race within each other, in fact. So, yeah, a very, very close race, and very interesting to see just how diverse the route could be with the same lines chosen. So, in with us now is the winning team, Team Brime. You guys, congratulations on the victory.
Thank you. I think one thing we should say right off the bat, we need to learn our checkpoints.
Yeah, I was like, warp to the checkpoint with the flowers above the tanks.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was.
And I thought he was
It's
talking
quite
about the
difficult.
boss one, and then he's like, no, like, what are you talking about?
There is, in fact, some some official names for the checkpoints, I guess, which would
Right.
be a little bit easier to communicate. But we did notice that it was probably the only real slip up that happened throughout the ending portion, especially. But would like to congratulate both of you guys for kind of coming up with that warp painting route, not finishing wooded initially and coming back to grab the moons in order to make the moon dump a little bit smaller and avoiding the one in Metro entirely, which was a very, very smart idea, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised with how well I played. This is probably some of the best Odyssey I've done, like, in recent weeks, because I haven't had very good runs, but I was pretty happy with my performance.
Yeah, execution seemed really solid.
There for a good, like, 20 seconds.
Yeah, and when it comes down to a board where the route is the same as your opponent, of course, it's going to come down to that execution, and I think that Admi, you did an excellent job of that specifically. And I guess the question of the day, which is, as a runner, Admi, how did you feel not having to worry about routing in bingo? How did you feel having somebody kind of in your ear just telling you what to do?
It felt so good. I was like, when it comes to bingo, like executing the route is like it's pretty easy for me, obviously, as you can tell, but like finding the route and like figuring out synergy as I'm doing it is a lot harder than it seems. like normally what I do in bingo is I go through cap and then start doing some cascade stuff unless I see purples, and I get purples. And then after that, I just kind of move all over the place and have no idea what to do. But when somebody's telling me as I'm going, it's much easier.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the appeal of this rally bingo situation. So very well executed. We have with us in the call now as well Team LakeClipper, who unfortunately is going to be coming up just slightly short this go around. We'll start with the routers in pars. How did you feel about this board? What were some of the things that went through your mind when this board popped up?
The board was good, I guess. At the start, I was like, I saw that there's a route that finished before Snow and Seaside again, but I saw World Peace Wooded and 28 Moons, and I thought, maybe not. Then I saw that all the others routes involving Seaside were also not really good, so I decided to stay with this one, and I think it is also the best one.
Yes, I think that any combination of those three lines and maybe row one, considering you're already making a revisit to cap, that 8 moons in cap is kind of slow, but not necessarily the worst thing possible. The original route I had in mind was actually not column 4, but instead row, because you're going to be spending so much time in wooded anyway. But regardless of the fact, I think that, yeah, it would really come down to execution, and especially the smart idea of coming through the warp painting in order to complete wooded. I think both of you guys showcased that very well. One of you actually completing World Peace after that as well. So very, very interesting perspectives on the same route. And
I have to say, I was a bit surprised when I saw that Otmi or Bright Guy marked World Peace Wooded so early, because I know Bright Guy likes to go back through the warp painting. but later on I realized, like, when we came back to or when I started to make a route for it, I realized that we have too many moons almost. And then I realized it could have really been better to go world peace first.
Yeah, so I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking we do it later, and then when I was counting our moons, like after Spewart, it was just like 4 from world peace, 5 from sub areas, 2 timers, and I was like, wow, that's already like too many almost.
Yeah, world peace first is my idea. Thank you.
Just throwing in the credit where credit is due.
I was just like rolling up to the top where the tanks are, and I'm like, should we? Since I'm going here, shouldn't we just do this first? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah. We opted. I opted to call for a tower skip once we started figuring that out, just because like did we do that? Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
We did
there
tower
was a
skip,
We
yeah.
were
tower
thinking
skip.
about it for a very long time, just which moons were going to be fast enough and which ones were.
Okay.
Yeah, when you start combining things like the timer challenges, lots of timer challenges become available after peace, so comboing those in to a revisit is not a very bad idea. And not to mention that world peace, of course, warps you back to the Odyssey, so very quick access to the next kingdom if you're doing it that way. So, but again, very interesting perspectives. I think that just the execution, perhaps, playing the part in the victory here. Also, Small Ant, how did you feel your execution went for this particular race?
I think early game I did pretty well up until like around sand, but I haven't been practicing too much past sand, so I think that showed. A lot of my lost movement wasn't incredibly confident, and I think I miss a cycle in the Cloud Kingdom or something ridiculous. There's some minor things like that where in the later half my movement was a little bit less confident, but the beginning it was a good start. But I think it did come back down to execution.
Yeah, it looked like you guys were more or less on the same path, on the same idea right up until Wooded, and then it kind of diverged a little bit, and then you met again at the end, and it was more obvious towards the end just who had kind of been a little bit tighter on the execution, and that was, in this case, Team Brime. So congratulations to Team Brime for the victory in this one. GG's to both teams for their participation, and check out all of these runners. We have Oddme, we have Small Ant 1, we have Bry Guy, and we have Zipars. Checked out their channels. They're excellent. They do a lot of Odyssey content if you're interested in that kind of thing. And GG's to everybody. We have one more match coming up into this here at Triple Bingo tournament, and I think we have about half an hour of break time. We're going to take an intermission, and we will be back, so stay tuned, everyone.